governance in the digital age, opportunities and traps, and I will start with the traps actually. So what are the problems, first of all, to be solved? Well, they're quite existential. It's like climate change, financial, economic and spending crisis, conflict and war, mass migration, terrorism, and all of that, I'm afraid, is connected with one fundamental problem, which is lack of sustainability. We're overusing resources, and that creates lack of resources in some places, and as a result, that creates conflict and war and mass migration, all these kind of things. And this is actually quite troublesome because some studies, including those commissioned by the Club of Rome, actually imply that the world would see an economic and population collapse, and actually pretty soon. So the shocking thing is actually no matter what parameters you chose to simulate the world, it always ended in these kind of collapse scenarios. And people have been asking, are we doomed? Do we need to learn to die in the Anthropocene? Or do we manage to get to the next level? And if yes, how to do that? Well, there were quite a few ideas on how to do that, and I'm afraid that maybe we have actually been deceived about what would be the possible solution. And everyone got quite excited about big data. Certainly we can use it for a lot of things. But then there were people like Chris Anderson who said, if we just had enough data, we wouldn't need theory and science any longer. Quantity would turn into quality, and the data would tell us what to do. And the dream came up that we could know everything that's going on in the world and see it as it happens and even predict it ahead of time through predictive analytics. Now, that's a nice dream. The question is, does it work? And it doesn't always work. And the reason is this formula, as nice as it sounds, like more data is more knowledge, and more knowledge is more power, and more power is more success, actually fails in many cases. And the reason is the more data you have, the more patterns will you find in the data. And a lot of them will be random patterns. And a lot of this will be spurious correlations. And here's just one of them, number of serial killers as a function of chocolate consumption. If that was true, living in Switzerland would be very dangerous. Now here's another correlation between number of forest fires and number of ice cream eating children. Very strong correlation actually, but if you would lock away those ice cream eating children in a prison, it wouldn't reduce the number of forest fires. So that shows you that even strong correlations can be quite misleading, and you might be doing the wrong thing. As it happened with Google Flu Trends, it was one of the major success stories in the beginning of this big data hype. Now it's actually taken offline. And here's another example. 23andMe came up with this genetic test, and you would send in a probe, you would get back a letter and would say, these are the diseases that you're likely to get, and maybe this is the disease that you're likely to die of. Now that was taken off the market by the health authority, something that doesn't happen so often in the United States, I guess. Of course, they love free markets. So what happened? Well, if you would send another probe to another company and a third one to a third company, you would get different letters. And you would perhaps die of something else, according to the letter. So people got scared about what the letter said, and it was obviously not reliable. So we call that sensitivity. There's another interesting thing. The most livable cities in the world are located not in the leading IT nations, surprisingly so. even though they're promising us paradise on Earth all the time. And in fact, I've been participating in this workshop on disrupting cities through technology. It was in smart cities about a year ago, and it had people on board from companies and from those smart test cities and also Homeland Security and everything. Everyone would have something to say, and the conclusion was it didn't work well. Mayors of cities hadn't been very satisfied, citizens hadn't been very satisfied, the companies too. Now, with artificial intelligence, is this going to change? In about 20 years, people say we'd have computer power more intelligent than people. Maybe we have it already, the military or whatever. So some people at Singularity University and the Silicon Valley say if we just had super intelligent systems, they would eventually understand what the problems of the world were, and they would solve them one by one, and by the middle of the century, basically all our problems would be solved. Now, I will tell you later on why I don't think this will happen. I think this is really troubling misunderstanding. But anyway, these kind of systems, these self-learning systems, were basically used to steer people, as I will show. So basically, the idea was people could be conditioned, like dogs, basically. Back in the 30s of last century, people put animals into these Skinner boxes and exposed them to rewards and punishments to make them do or not do certain kind of things. And now we are the experimental subjects. They've been locked into Skinner boxes that are called filter bubbles. They've been created invisibly around us. Through personalized information, they're influencing our behavior. And how does it work? It uses deep learning and other machine learning methods, which is applied to big data, and that's actually your data. I mean, all the data that has been collected about each and every one of us, in many cases secretly, so you don't know how much data is there about each and every one of us. I think Kosinski just said in 2012 it was 500 megabytes per day and person. In 2025 it will be 62 gigabytes per day in person collected about us. I don't know if you believe that. Anyway, this kind of data is being fed into black boxes that learn to behave similar to us. So digital doubles are being created, and this way it's possible to test how we can be influenced with certain informational inputs. And Google is of course one of the companies that learned early on how to influence people's attention and emotions and opinions and decisions and behaviors through personalized information. And that also became interesting for politics, of course, where the idea was we could now eventually influence the consumer in such a way that consumers would become environmental friendly and would do something for their health and all this. And so the societies got on this path of persuasion, but how it ended was quite different. These kind of technologies were used to make us buy lemonades full of sugar and 10 pairs of sports shoes and all these kind of things, and stuff that we don't need, stuff that is a burden to our environment. And so it's being used for mind control and social engineering and deception. That's where we are, you know, pretty much remotely controlled. Why? Because the idea was democracies are not efficient enough. They have to be much more efficient, and that's why we would need something like a digital scepter that would allow politicians to steer people. And so the idea came up, if we just had enough data, couldn't we optimize the course of the world and come up with a big plan that would basically say what everyone had to do to create the optimal outcome? So could we rule the world like a benevolent dictator or a wise king driven with big data? Could we run society like a giant machine? That were the kinds of ideas, and so if you wanted to do that, you would need to know what are all those pieces, and of course it's you and me and everyone else, and how to control them. And actually in Singapore and other places, there are experiments going on to find out how that can be done and how effective that actually is. But of course, Singapore is not a democracy in the sense we see it over here in Europe. So people started to say democracy is an outdated technology. I said it has created wealth, health, and happiness for billions of people, but now we want to do something new. Yeah? The question is, what should that be? Should that be the opposite? Anyway, so people said, with technology we can build better societies. Started democracy is dead. Technocracy would be the better approach, and what I said about smart cities, of course, also applies to the old smart societies concept that has been around for some time. And people said, we just need to make sure that people don't misbehave, and everyone should be at his place or her place and do what's told by the smartphone or whatever device. And if they don't do it, then we jump in with predictive policing and make sure that basically everyone does what they should do. And programs like Karma Police were created that give you plus and minus points in the UK, but probably also elsewhere, for everything you do or don't do, including the movies you watch on your computer, the music that you listen to. And in China, that has quite fundamental implication on lives of people, in perspective at least. They're testing the citizen score system at the moment. And there it determines how much you would have to pay for your loan, what kind of jobs you can get, what kind of countries you could travel to, and all these kind of things. So it's basically neo-feudalistic, totalitarian governance approaches. And that's why some people have started to warn the public of technological totalitarianism. In fact, we have ended in a world where we can say the technology for a 1984 style society or Brave New World is already there. The question is, to what extent is it already being used? To what extent will it be used in the future? So there's mass surveillance profiling, there's behavioral manipulation, there's a citizen score, predictive policing, also censorship, war games, destabilization of political regime. I didn't talk about everything because I just have 30 minutes, and more terrible things. And if you want to get an idea of how that could end, then maybe you would like to read this science fiction called I, God, which is exactly about this kind of technology and what to do. So basically, I think it's time to make sure that these cyber technologies will be democratically controlled in a transparent way, will be scientifically used by interdisciplinary teams that would report to the public, would be ethically used, and this technology wouldn't be misused. I think also we need to talk about informational self-determination. In fact, in The Hague, we are currently talking about a first center that will go in this direction. Will use big data about the world. The PAIRS platform And we want to create something like a collaborative peace room rather than a war room, which would have all those features, and it would have the purpose to help increase sustainability, resilience, and support humanitarian aid around the world. People have also thought, if we are running into these shortages of resources in the future, what would be the right strategy? And companies have suggested we're the solution. If resources are short, then we need to produce very efficient. That speaks for economies of scale. In the ideal case, from their point of view, would be a monopoly. And the free trade deals are very much in favor of this, but I personally think that what we really need is a circular economy. We'll come back to this later on. So this approach suggests that the right thing to do is to look into all possible solutions of a problem. So you ask, what's the problem? Okay, we come up with a collection of all the solutions that we know of, and then we select the best one. And that will be scaled up globally, one solution. But that creates something like a tunnel vision. And solutions often look like this. Well, in fact, we'd like to have something that includes sufficient diversity, because diversity is important for resilience, as we'll discuss later on. And I think we need to talk about new governance approaches where basically politicians would not be lobbied by business people, would sit at the same table with business people, and scientists and citizen representatives too. So all those different perspectives and interests would be properly balanced. Now, I think what we're heading towards is a transformation of our society, both because of the digital revolution, and second of all, because we need to create a low carbon economy. That means for ecological reasons. And that means we need to change the equations. If changing the parameters to save the world doesn't work to save the world, we need to change the equations. And changing the equations means looking whether we need to reform our monetary system, our financial system, our economic system, and our society too. Maybe that's not the solution to the problems that we actually have. Maybe we need different kinds of rules. Maybe we need to change, to be more cooperative, to network our ideas and resources and all of these kind of things, and have been publishing newspaper articles about this. Why am I saying this? It's pretty much driven by technology. So the point is that even though processing power is increasing exponentially, data volume increases even faster. That means there's a gap opening up that's becoming ever greater. In the future, data will double every 12 hours, not only every 12 months. So there's a lot of dark data that we will never be able to look into. So it needs science to tell you what is the data that you need to look at and how to process it. So we are currently running into a very paradoxical situation that we have the best technology ever and more data than we've ever had. But it seems like we're losing control of the world as we're trying to control it in a top-down way. And that's because systemic complexity is even increasing faster than data as we network the world. It increases combinatorially, not just exponentially. So we need a new control paradigm. That would be distributed control. Fortunately, there are new technologies that would allow for this, like blockchain technology and decentralized autonomous organizations. So there is a solution for the kinds of complex systems that we're faced with. Now, what do we need to know about complex systems? Complex systems tend to self-organize. They have their own dynamics, and that dynamics creates certain kinds of collective patterns in many cases. In this case, for example, these lanes of uniform walking direction, which makes pedestrian flows quite efficient, but in other cases, something like this could happen. That you have a local perturbation in the system, and that obviously triggers a cascading effect, and it messes up your entire system. And these kind of things do happen. For example, bankruptcy cascades during the financial crisis have pretty much these features. So what do we need to do? First of all, in a world that's undergoing these transformations, that's being challenged, in many cases in unforeseen ways, you need a resilient society that's able to respond flexibly to those challenges. And what does that take? Requires diversity, so there are many solutions at hand. You pick the one that fits the challenge. Decentralization, that's basically to prevent the cascading effects that would hit the entire world. Modular design, distributed control, subsidiarity. And it implies a new kind of globalization that I'd like to call globalization. That means to think global, but to act local and diverse, to experiment and to learn from each other. So how could this look like? For example, we could implement City Olympics. Every 2 or every 4 years, cities would engage in the competition for the most energy efficient solutions, for climate friendly solutions, for sustainable, resilient solutions, for environmental friendly solutions, for socially responsible solutions. Whatever is important would be a discipline of that Olympics. There would be different weight classes, like small cities, large cities, and they would compete against each other. It would involve scientists and engineers, it would involve the media, politics, and the general public, because people should be mobilized to buy new technology, solar panels, or other kinds of technology that should spread to make sure that we are achieving our sustainability goals as quickly as possible. And then every other year there would be a cooperative round where cities basically look at what were the solutions, the best solution of other cities that would fit their own city and their own culture best. So the results of that Olympics would be Creative Commons and open source, and that means all the other cities could benefit basically. And I think that would really boost solutions. And there are a lot of also experience that speaks for such an approach, given that the old globalization paradigm is in a crisis. Now also, I think we need to upgrade democracy with digital means. Of course, we should use digital technologies, and we should boost collective intelligence, make sure that the best ideas and knowledge of many people and also AI systems are brought together. So basically, the point is to collect arguments and ideas and possible solutions, and then sort all those arguments that can be maybe done with AI systems actually, to identify the main arguments, the main perspectives on a complex problem, and then a round table would be created to try to integrate those different perspectives and solutions to come up with integrated, innovative solutions that would satisfy many people and companies. So this is basically the essence about digital democracy, and the nice thing is actually that such combined solutions outcompete even the best single solutions, as many examples have shown. So diversity wins, not the best. And here is a newspaper article that goes a little bit more into detail how to improve democracies in digital times. Then I said distributed control, so that comes down to digital assistance that would support self-organization. We know from Nobel Prize winner Elinor Ostrom that self-governance can be sufficient if you have proper design principles. So everything comes down to finding good design principles and how to interact with each other. You know, reputation systems, qualification systems, moderation systems, and all these kind of things. Now, let's talk about disaster response management as an example. So this is today's survival kit. Tomorrow's survival kit will be this. We can use smartphones, of course, to make measurements. Most people don't know there are a lot of sensors in the smartphone, so we can measure acceleration. We can couple many smartphones to warn us of earthquakes. So we could get out in a safe place quickly, and we could use also our smartphones to respond to disasters in a participatory way, to map the disaster, what bridge has collapsed, what building is damaged, uploaded. So first aid, government, and also people in the neighborhood would know what the situation is. Then, of course, after some time, you have to recharge your phone. Usually, there's a blackout during disasters, so you need to have autonomous charging units, charge beacons. Over here, you have a solar panel. Neighbors would meet, they would talk about the situation, come up with solutions. And here would be an app for a decentralized sharing economy, where you can say, I'm so sorry, I need help. You know, can somebody provide me with a warm blanket, or can somebody maybe take care of my grandfather while I'm trying to find some food, or can somebody walk my dog, whatever, you know. And as we know, in disaster situations, people are willing to help. Just the issue is how to coordinate all this. And here, of course, digital platforms can be the solutions. Also, when the communication infrastructure breaks down, we'd like to keep up communications through ad hoc networks between the phones directly. You'd like to be able to pay stuff that you want to buy still, so you need to have a decentralized payment system. All of that could be built, all of that could be in our smartphone, and wake up when it's needed to help us, and help us help each other. So that's the idea. Well, we can go even further. We're working on a small demo project that's called NervousNet. It's using the sensors in our smartphones with the idea that 300 years after Adam Smith, we could actually now make the invisible hand work. And I think I won't show the movie because there's not enough time, but you find it also in our YouTube channels. It's possible to dissolve traffic jams by measuring distances and relative velocities and responding automatically to this input data by changing the interaction between cars. And the point is to have real-time data and create the right kind of real-time feedback to establish the kinds of interaction that would ensure a stable flow and a higher capacity. And we have done it, and it works well, and we've also come up with new solutions for city centers, traffic light control, where the traffic flows would control the traffic lights rather than the other way around, locally, with a coordination mechanism between neighboring intersections. and it creates green waves in a self-organized way. And it's even more efficient than those state-of-the-art solutions that are based on traffic centers, because traffic light control is an NP-hard problem. You cannot really exactly solve it in real time. And we've chosen an approach that responds flexibly to the actual situation. And it's so much better, and it's also better for the environment. Now, to come back to the initial point, we really need to solve this problem. Sustainability is the major challenge for humanity. But there's no lack of resources. There's no overpopulation in the strict sense. Now, each of us is throwing away 50 tons of waste in a lifetime. That's a lot of furniture, cars, computers, smartphones, all sorts of stuff. Enough stuff for 5 people if we wouldn't throw it away. So the problem is the linear supply chains where we use fresh resources, build as many copies of a product as we can, then push it out to the consumers through marketing campaigns that consume billions of dollars, and then people would consume it and throw it away. That obviously doesn't make much sense in the future, and we would need to create a circular economy and a sharing economy, so more people could have a good life with less resources. And how to do that? Well, basically we need to measure externalities such as noise, CO2, wasted resources of all kinds, unemployment, all sorts of stuff that we don't want to have, but also the good things like cooperation, health, education, reuse of wasted resources, and all this. And we would give them either a price or a value. Actually, many different kinds of currencies would be used to have a differentiated accounting and a differentiated feedback loops. So we would create new market forces to increase positive externalities and reduce negative ones. And it can be done with blockchain technology. So basically imagine that all materials in products would have an invisible, small, blockchain-based sticker that says, I'm steel, I'm aluminum, I'm this kind of plastic, I'm that and that and that. And it would create attractive forces. So if you would reuse what was previously waste, you could earn money on it. You know, we could build the values of our society into this multidimensional incentive system. And while today it's expensive to produce in an environmental friendly way and socially responsible, in the future, with that new multidimensional financial system, you could earn on these kind of things, right? That's the idea. So we would create basically the circular economy not through regulation, but through new kinds of market forces. So it would happen through emergence and self-organization, because there are incentives, because you can earn monies on this. And then how to boost co-creation? Well, I think the paradigm really should be to empower people to take better decisions, to be more creative, to be more innovative, to help them coordinate each other and cooperate, because that will automatically lead to better products and more successful businesses and nicer neighborhoods and smarter cities and a better world. And we should have an economy that supports combinatorial innovation. Europe has to do this, because if you want to do the same thing as in the Silicon Valley, just with a few years of delay, it's the exponential law that predicts that the distance between the Silicon Valley and Europe would still grow exponentially. So if you want to catch up with the Silicon Valley, you need to have a faster growth law. Combinatorial growth is faster than exponential. So we need to create an economy that allows for that combinatorial growth. That requires interoperability, it requires data portability. Then an information innovation, production, and service ecosystem can grow where everyone can contribute with ideas, new business models and services and so on. And how to get there? So a lot of people say open data, open innovation, open access, open everything, but of course how to make money on when everything is for free, right? So companies would say, well, you're not sure. So you can combine the two things. The point is that in an exponentially accelerating digital economy, you would make 90% or 95% of your money on your data and your algorithm within 2 years. Bloomberg, for example, with their financial data services, they make 95% of their money within 15 minutes. Then they could give it away in principle. Of course, they wouldn't give it away if they don't get anything in return, but if everyone after 2 years would open up the data and algorithm, we would have transparency, we would have benefits for everyone. Now, that's how rainforest works, an ecosystem. The trees drop leaves after some time. And that's needed. If they wouldn't drop leaves, there wouldn't be any rainforest. Of course, that creates humus, and in that humus there will be all those plants and bushes and trees. And the animals will eat the bushes and trees and all this, but there will be a huge diversity and a huge abundance. And if now the big business tells you, we don't like this, they're stupid, because the biggest trees are growing in these kind of ecosystems. As everyone could benefit if we agree on such a principle. Commercial data and algorithm for 2 years, and open it up. If they don't want to do it, then you could make tax benefits for those who do it. So there should be reciprocity. Now, finally, we really need to boost innovation. Now, we have about 15 years, not even, until 2030. Now, how to be sustainable in 2030, how to reduce CO2 by 40 or 50% within just 15 years, while it takes 30 years usually to build and plan a road. We really need to have explosive innovation, and obviously businesses can't do it the way they've done it in the past. We need to have a new innovation paradigm. And so we can learn from this, and World Economic Forum has said it, why inequality harms economic growth. So here's my proposal. Today we're pumping hundreds of billions of dollars into the financial markets through programs that are called quantitative easing. Most of that money never reaches the small and medium-sized companies, those who ask for loans to build up new capacities and produce new products and so on. It never reaches us citizens, so it's somewhere, but not where it should be. You could pump that into the markets in a bottom-up way. Pay an investment premium on each bank account. Very different idea from the basic income. Basic income is a flat thing. Basically, everyone would get the same thing, and there wouldn't be any incentives to compete and to work hard and so on. The investment premium is not for you. It's for you to distribute it to others. To people with great ideas, people who would build new technologies, people that would engage in social and ecological projects, people who would build kindergartens, renew streets, keep the park clean, and all these kind of things. Wherever you think, as a citizen, this is the most urgent way to spend money, you decide to give that investment premium to. So there would be a competition, people could, with good ideas, would earn a great salary, but everyone would decide. So that would be crowdfunding for everyone, basically. It would be democratic capitalism. We would all have a say what needs to be done next, what needs to be done urgently. We would be able to crowdfund. We would be able to mobilize the wisdom of crowds, and it would create a much more pluralistic innovation. Today, we have the situation that there are some venture capitalists that have a lot of money, and that's fine. But there are even more people with great ideas, and they need to talk to these few people who don't have much time. So a lot of great ideas are lost on the way. They never see a realization. Moreover, the venture capitalists would say, okay, that's like an interesting idea, but I don't like it because it's not compatible with all my other businesses that I'm running, with the previous business models. But obviously the previous business models haven't solved the world's problems, so the only thing that can save the world is new business models that challenge the old ones. And the venture capitalists wouldn't give money for this. So you need to have a new innovation system, and democratic capitalism can do it. And I think if we would realize all those proposals that I was suggesting over here, and I think it's doable. If we just wanted, we would live in prosperity and peace around the world. To fix the world by 2030, we need not benevolent, data-driven dictatorships, but this is what we need. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions? And then we go for and
That
then
was
we can
a
discuss on the answer. There are many. So let's give it to 2, 3, and then we have a break for lunch, and then we.
I
The afternoon is
checked
for
the lunch
discuss.
is served.
Is it ready?
I checked.
It's there. I think it's there. But anyway, let's have 1 or 2 questions. It shouldn't be done for. Any? Yes, start. If you start, yes.
Several again. Thank you.
Can we do it one by one? Yeah.
Yes. Or well, the note I took when you started, there are different moods in the different stage of your talk, and so maybe it's not needed to go back to the origin of your talk. But when you start to say that all the problem that we are facing is due to a lack of sustainability, I would say that I would challenge that, because I think that
I didn't say all, but a lot of them, right?
Yeah, but that, okay. And when you say learning to die in the Anthropocene, no, because there has been war, there have been crusades, Nikos reminded us that. So it's not as if we were living in a doom period and before that everything was okay. So I think we should also, not put on sustainability or the problem of sustainability today, everything, overload the problem. When you say learning to die in the Anthropocene, what did you mean? Because we are mortal, aren't we? So we die, even when we don't learn, we die anyway.
No, so that it's a book title, right? So basically, I recommend to read the book. The point, however, that I'd like to make is that, of course, we're not talking about a natural death. We're talking about this, that there would be billions of people dying if we go on as before. They would die an unnatural death by World War III, by diseases, whatever. I mean, that would. Crusades would be a small thing as compared to what's going to come.
Okay. And then disruption. It's about the world of disruption and all your boosting everything. I want to draw the attention on boosting. This leaves me totally cold as a metaphor. I don't know why it seems so attractive to we always use the word boosting growth and job. Why is there a need to boost? And isn't it just, I think the co-creation, the collective, all what you think is more organic. It's not of the order of magnitude of boosting. So why this metaphor of boosting?
Well, if you like another kind of word, then use another. I mean, a lot of this is actually about removing obstacles that we have had in the innovation and other systems in the past.
No, I understand, but the notion of boosting, is I think we should stay away maybe from thinking that boosting express a more powerful attitude, or that we will be more in control. Okay.
We're talking about words. If you have a better one, let me know.
Yeah, no, okay, no, just I'm sharing also with others because boosting. Then innovation. How do you ensure? When you say boosting innovation, and I heard your idea of investing in premium. Is innovation has been what has driven us into the deadlock that we are. So why do you say boosting innovation? How can you ensure that it is a sustainable?
No, but it's a.
And all that type. Is this with the investor premium idea that you think it will be a good innovation?
We have had a different kind of innovation in the past. I was referring to this over here when I said the way we're doing it today is basically select one solution and scale it up globally. So diversity is lost, right? And that makes your system pretty irresilient. What I was saying is we need to have much more pluralistic innovation that challenges all business models also, and more innovation capacity, like
But see the two-sided market.
Civil society.
Business model, yeah.
Let's have a question and then we go for that.
Okay,
Just
last. Yes, please.
If I may, thank you so much for your presentation. I enjoyed it very much, and the sort of the kind of red thread that runs through it. I mean, it speaks to me very much. But there were a couple of things that I felt were maybe slightly contradictory, but that might just be down to my misinterpretation. So I'd just like some points for clarification. You were talking, particularly with initiatives, a bit like the almost like the geographical Olympic Games, for example. You were talking about this move to urban, if you like, and that importance. And we know about the sort of, indeed, the global move to urbanization. But whilst we're looking at digital transformation here, just going back to this particular project at hand, we're potentially making those who are remote, by not including them in this kind of initiative, even more remote. And I guess the question is, if we're focusing on urban areas, then how can we be using potentially projects like this to actually access people who are already feeling distant?
Right.
On the one side, it's just coming back to
Yeah,
this
but
concept
that's not how I
equity.
meant it to be, as you assumed already. So I would see it much more inclusive, and not just the city, but also the regions around the city, right? So it's not about leaving out the rural areas as compared to the urban areas. On the contrary, it's just about a more diverse and distributed bottom-up paradigm that would allow civil society to contribute a lot more to the solutions of the world.
Okay. And then if I may, then there was just, I guess, something that I was perhaps missing was obviously the complexity of language. And with your focus on the need for decentralization, if we're looking at issues, say, of public health, for example, or in areas where I worked in crisis and things like food safety and such like, if there is no centralized management of this and everyone is doing their own different things, how would you see us overcoming the issues and of linguistic barriers?
I don't worry too much about this, because now we're seeing more and more systems that would do real-time translation from one language into another one, and of course that can be extended to these kind of issues too. Of course, what we need, if you go for a more distributed approach, is adapters, basically, coordination approaches. So that is important, but I think digital technology can do exactly this, and it helps to coordinate that diversity.